If you stop feeling suffering and you stop feeling pain and you stop feeling guilt and you start feeling elevated emotions like joy or inspiration or gratitude, not just in a momentary state like positive thinking, but to be able to self-regulate and maintain that, if we could teach that, could we produce the same effects in people?
Welcome to Good Vibes. We are dedicated to raise your vibration to make you inspired and make your day. Before we start, hit the subscribe button and the bell button next to it. Enjoy the video.
So I think this is a time in history, Mark, where it's not enough to know. It's a time in history to know how. And so all that philosophy is all great dinner conversation, but when you're given a diagnosis, now you got to step out of the bleachers and you got to get on the playing field and you got to start making different choices. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, whether you like it or not, you're going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. You're not going to be able to predict what's going to happen. There's going to be some uncertainty because you're leaving the known familiar self. And so how does the person become the person they are? And why do they keep their health condition the same? And well, most people, your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment. So most people wake up in the morning, if you think that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, they start thinking about their problems. And those problems are just memories that are etched in their brain that are connected to certain people and objects and certain things at certain times and places. And the moment they start thinking about their problems, they're thinking in the past. Now, because every one of those problems has an emotion associated with them, the moment they start feeling unhappy or feeling sad, now their body's in the past, because thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body, and how we think and how we feel creates our state of being. Now, the problem is that the person thinks of the problem, feels the emotion, and that is a thought and a feeling. That's an image and an emotion. It's a stimulus and response, and that starts the conditioning process to get the body emotionally conditioned into the past. Now, here's the crazy part about that. The familiar past, emotionally, is producing dramatic effects on the body because the body is so objective that it does not know the difference between the real life experience that's creating that emotion and the emotion that person is fabricating by thought or memory alone. The body's believing it's living in the same past experience 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And the problem with that is that the environment signals the gene. That's epigenetics. And the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. So the person is keeping the same gene regulated because the body's believing it's living in the same environmental conditions. So getting that person to step outside of that familiar known territory into the unknown, where there is uncertainty, and have them be comfortable there and begin to think about how they are going to think. So if we don't address those unconscious programs, you can, and you're an integrated physician, you understand this, that you could have the healthiest ketogenic, vegan, intermittent fasting, enzymes, food combining. And if you're living in fear, if you're living in pain, the cell is not in a state to actually absorb anything. It's in a state of emergency. In an emergency, there's no growth and repair. So then we said, okay, let's see if we can demystify the process. So the concept, the word meditation, literally means to become familiar with. If you look at the symbolism of it and you look it up, it's familiarization. So you sit down and you say, okay, I don't want to be unhappy. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to talk trash about people. I don't want to complain. I want to blame. I don't want to make excuses. I don't want to feel lack. I don't want to have an attitude that's telling me I can. It's too hard. That's the old identity, right? So the moment you start becoming conscious of those unconscious thoughts, the moment you become aware of your automatic habits and behaviors, the moment you can notice that this is actually guilt that you're feeling, or sadness or pain, the moment you can become conscious and familiar with those states of mind and body, if you keep becoming familiar with it, if you keep becoming conscious of it, you won't go unconscious. So sitting in a meditation to know thyself, most people all of a sudden, here comes the barrage of thoughts. Here comes the propensities and habits, and here comes the emotions. The body's saying, you normally complain at this time. What are you doing sitting? With your eyes closed. Let's think of a reason why you can complain, and the body starts influencing the mind. So if you break it down to for a person to understand, how many times do we have to forget until we start remembering and keep remembering and stop forgetting? That's the process of change. So then you put a person in a meditation, and they hear that voice, they hear that chatter, they want to get up and go to the bathroom, they want to check their cell phone, they want to feel angry. And instead of getting up and saying, I can't meditate, see, they're coming to the end of the known. So they want to go back to what's known, right? If you teach the person what to do, and you show them that on the other side of that is freedom, on the other side of that is joy, you got to become so conscious, and it takes a lot of awareness, it takes a lot of energy to sit with yourself long enough to disentangle from those programs. Now, we now know that it's a formula, that if you follow a formula, you will actually start pruning circuitry. You'll stop the conditioning process and move the body out of the past, and it starts liberating energy. And that's energy to heal with. That's energy to create a new life. That's energy to digest again. The body's no longer living in survival or living in emergency. And the majority of people's emotions then tend to be derived from the hormones of stress. And so that we started realizing that the arousal of the stress hormones, the rush of the chemistry, is actually tapping the body's resources. And the stronger the emotions we feel towards any problem or person in our life, the more we pay attention to them. And if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, then you're giving your power away to that person or problem. And if a person can learn to sit in the fire and say, it's not my boss, it's not my ex, it's not my job, it's not the pandemic, it's me. That this emotion isn't serving me because this emotion is the exact emotion that's pushing the genetic buttons that's creating disease. Okay, if I can keep practicing lowering the volume to that emotion, I'll keep taking my attention off that person or problem. And in a sense, the body starts moving back where? Into the present moment. It starts getting relaxed in the unknown. So we started teaching people the process, and by a person overcoming their past, not the trauma, just the emotion. They just have to work on breaking that conditioning process, because if you keep doing it over and over again, a habit is when the body becomes the mind. Now the body's influencing the mind. So we teach a person then how to break that conditioning process. The body starts moving into the present moment. It's no longer in the same environmental condition. And then all of a sudden, we start to see some pretty dramatic changes in people's health. The arousal causes us to focus on the material world. As our senses become heightened, and we focus on everything that's physical and material, and we start over focusing. That's what stress does. So we thought, what if we taught people to do the opposite? Instead of narrowing their focus on whatever is material or known to them, let's have them open their focus and broaden their focus and put their attention on nothing physical and put it on nothing, on space, on energy. And if we can create what's called a divergent focus, is it possible that the brain would begin to fire more coherently? And all of a sudden, we started seeing the front of the brain talking the back of the brain and synchronizing areas together, and what syncs in the brain links in the brain. And all of a sudden, you see the person starting to feel more whole. You keep doing that, more coherence creates more energy. The waves start standing and they start building on each other. And when that happens, there's an arousal that ultimately takes place in the brain, but the arousal is not fear, the arousal is not pain or aggression, and the arousal is not is anger. The arousal is ecstasy, the arousal is bliss. When that occurs, the stimulation that's being created, and we see these high gamma patterns that are off the scale. The arousal that's taking place is not taking place from anything out there in the environment. It's not taking place from the sports car, or the wardrobe, or the movie, or the cell phone. It's happening inside the person, and all of a sudden, that's a new feeling. They've never had that feeling before, and they start feeling connected. The side effect of that is even greater levels of order in the brain, and all of a sudden, the heart gets very turned on, it gets very signaled, and the person is moving into an elevated state. And that kind of combination of energy between the heart and the brain causes the person to become creative. Not a little creative, but really seeing possibilities. They're conscious of things they were never conscious before, and that's a greater level of awareness, and that's a greater level of energy. And so people all of a sudden start seeing synchronicities that start taking place in their life because they have a coherent brain and a coherent heart, and you got a Wi-Fi signal, and you feel connected to something. You don't feel separate. Stress causes us to feel separation and lack, and this feeling makes you feel whole, and all of a sudden all the things that you wanted because you were in lack, you no longer want because you feel like you have them. And that's the kind of place where you can relax more into the present moment and enjoy the sunset and enjoy the meal and enjoy the conversation and enjoy the connection because you're present. And I say that that's a skill because a lot of people don't know what to do when they have that thought. They have no formula that's scientific and practical that if they can practice enough times, if nerve cells that fire together wire together, then nerve cells that no longer fire together no longer wire together. And if you stick with it, and we can tell you this, that sooner or later that thought is going to start to have a weakening effect on your mind until ultimately it's no longer going to be there because you no longer paid attention to it, no longer accepted it, no longer believed it, no longer surrendered to it. And most people, when they get to this point, Mark, they think, I'm doing my meditation wrong. And I always tell them, no. You're actually doing it right. That's what I want you to see. That's standing in the way between you and your happiness. On the other side of that is a whole new area that you get to wire your brain any way you choose. So then there's an unlearning process before the relearning process. There's a breaking a habit of the old self and a reinvention of a new self. You got to prune synaptic connections, and then you got to practice sprouting new ones. You got to unfire and unwire. You got to refire and rewire. You got to deprogram and reprogram. You got to lose your mind and create a new one. And you have to unmemorize emotions that keep you connected to the same familiar past, and then recondition the body to a new mind and to a new emotion. So then that process, if there's a formula to apply, let's just say, you sitting in your meditation, it means
because it sounds good, right? But how do you get from here to there? I'm sure everybody's thinking is listening.
Yeah, of course. No, but everybody's done it. They've done it. They just haven't made it a habit. And so then, if you're sitting in a meditation and you have something to do, and your body starts going, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and it's my ex-wife, it's my whatever, and you go like this to your body. Okay, now listen, you settle down, and you know exactly what to do, and you tame the animal, you tell it to settle, stay, and you relax it back into the present moment. What I want you to know, sit. That's a victory. That's a victory. Yeah. And then if the body starts going, I got to get up, I got to check my cell phone, I got to go, I got a meeting, I'm busy, and you notice that your body's habituated into the same predictable future, and you settle your body back down into the present moment. Now you're executing a will that's greater than those unconscious programs, and that's a victory. And if you keep doing this over and over again, just like training an animal, the body's going to stay. It's going to surrender to a new mind. And when that occurs, There's a liberation of energy, and the person relaxes into the present moment. That's the unknown. The familiar past is the known. The predictable future is the known. The only one place left is the sweet spot of that generous present moment. Now let's get the person so familiar with their unconscious thoughts that when it comes, they don't respond to them. So aware of their habits and behaviors. So conscious of the emotions that they typically feel in a waking day. They would never go unconscious to that emotion again. And you say to the person, hey, Mark, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? And with intention and attention, if we showed you how to do that, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. Just take a little repetition, a little presence, you start installing the hardware. Keep doing it. It's going to become a software program. What does that mean? That's going to be the new voice in your head that says, Mark, you can do it.